Interesting interview here with Razor Ruddock, the former heavyweight contender from back in the days. I say back in the days, he actually fought fairly recently in an exhibition against James Toney. If you want to see a bit of car crash TV, go on YouTube and type in Razor Ruddock versus James Toney. In fact, you probably shouldn't do that actually, because your eyes will never be able to unsee it. Shocking stuff. Anyway, Razor Ruddock was a good puncher in his prime, fast heavyweight, athletic, but he was defensively quite poor. He got dropped a lot in his career, but he had very, very good recuperative powers. People talk about Tyson Fury being able to recover quickly from punches. Razor Ruddock had a similar ability in most of the fights that he got dropped. So for example, he got dropped very heavily by Bone Crusher Smith and was up almost instantly. He got dropped in those fights with Mike Tyson. I think it was 4 knockdowns in total, and was able to get up very quick. The most extraordinary recovery that I've seen from Razor Ruddock and potentially any other heavyweight, from a knockdown, would be when he fought Tommy Morrison. He gets hit with a picture-perfect left hook against Tommy Morrison that honestly would have knocked out a horse. I mean, it was a spectacular shot. Razor Ruddock went down so hard and so heavy, you thought, wow, he must be out cold. Miraculously, he was up at about the count of 3 or 4. I mean, seriously, go and watch that fight where Razor Ruddock fights Tommy Morrison. How on earth he wasn't out cold from that punch? The way it made his head spin around and he dropped to the canvas. He didn't even break his fall. He fell that heavily, right? I think his head even bounced off the canvas and he was up at like 3 or 4. Unbelievable powers of recovery this guy used to have. Anyway, I'm getting excited thinking about some of those old fights. But he talks about his fights with Mike Tyson, talks about his early career, and this might surprise a lot of people. He talked about who was the heaviest puncher he fought. He says that Lennox Lewis was a good puncher. He says that Mike Tyson was a good puncher, but the biggest puncher of all, according to Razor Ruddock, that he fought was Bone Crusher Smith. Yeah, he says Bone Crusher Smith actually hit him harder than anybody else. So he said here, in fact, before I go into that, he said that Tommy Morrison hit as hard as Mike Tyson. That might surprise some people, but Razor Ruddock is qualified to be able to say that because he tasted plenty of big shots of Tommy Morrison and plenty of big shots of Mike Tyson. And he said Tommy Morrison, at least with a left hook, hit as hard as Mike Tyson. I can believe it personally. Anyway, at the weigh-in with Bone Crusher Smith, he said, I tried to feel his strength. I leaned on him and it was like leaning on a wall. He was effing unbelievably strong. He was terrifying and embodied what it meant to be a slugger. Bone Crusher would punch through you. I tell you, when he punched me, it felt like an earthquake. Every inch of your body felt that power. Now, this is probably going to upset a lot of Mike Tyson fans because they want to believe that he was the best fighter the heavyweight division has ever seen in every single metric. They want to believe he's the fastest ever, the hardest punching ever, the physically strongest ever, the best chin ever, etc., etc., etc. They want to believe that prime Mike Tyson was literally superhuman. Well, here's a bit of reality for you. He wasn't. And although Mike Tyson was a great puncher, there have been plenty of fighters, surely, that hit harder than Mike Tyson. There are plenty of heavyweights today, surely, that hit harder than Mike Tyson. I've always argued that there are fighters who are not even great championship level operators that can hit harder than Mike Tyson. At the end of the day, there's no weight limit at heavyweight. There are guys 280 pounds who, if you put them on a punching machine to measure how hard they hit, I'm sure they would score harder than Mike Tyson. If they wound up and threw the biggest punch possible, Mike Tyson in his prime is only 220 pounds. A 280 guy who's, muscular and he knows how to put his weight behind his shots, he's going to be able to hit harder. With Mike Tyson, it wasn't so much the power, although he was a very hard puncher. It was the speed, the accuracy, and the fact that he threw in combinations. The fact that he was able to slip your shot and then come and hit you with a shot from an unexpected angle by surprise on the point of the chin and land clean. Mike Tyson wasn't a guy who would land cuffing, scuffing punches that don't quite hit on the vital area. No, he was accurate with his shots. This is what allowed him to get so many devastating knockouts and knockdowns. But if you're talking about just raw brute force, there are loads of heavyweights who hit harder than Mike Tyson, even guys who are not really elite, not even championship level. I'm sure there have been some journeymen out there who probably hit harder than Mike Tyson, punch for punch. But, that's not going to go down well with the Tyson crowd. So I'm certainly not surprised to hear Razor Ruddock say the Bone Crusher Smith was the hardest puncher he faced. Bone Crusher Smith could really crack. He was a relatively crude heavyweight, didn't have much by way of boxing skills, although he managed to jab and grab against Mike Tyson and survive the 12. But yeah, with the right hand, he could really get it in. He stopped Tim Witherspoon in one round, although Witherspoon claims he was paid to take a dive by Don King. That's actually what Tim Witherspoon said. Whether you want to believe that or not, that's up to you. But that was the second time they fought. And Witherspoon says that he was paid to take a dive. But Bone Crusher Smith did score plenty of legitimate knockouts along the way. And he dropped Razor Ruddock heavily when they fought. That was another example of Razor Ruddock suffering a really heavy knockdown and getting up almost instantly. In fact, the knockdown he suffered against Bone Crusher Smith was somewhat reminiscent of the first knockdown against Lennox Lewis, where his legs kind of just give way and he slips almost on his side. Yeah, similar situation against Bone Crusher Smith if you haven't seen that fight. And Razor Ruddock was a very entertaining heavyweight, by the way. If you haven't seen any of Razor Ruddock's fights other than maybe, Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis, it's worth going into the archives and digging up some more of his contests because, yeah, the guy was in some good ones. He fought the likes of Greg Page, Michael Dokes, Bone Crusher Smith, Phil Jackson is a guy he stopped. So, and definitely the Tommy Morrison fight. That's a wild, wild heavyweight slugfest with a spectacular ending. So make sure you check that one out. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Razor Ruddock saying that Bone Crusher Smith was the hardest puncher he ever faced. A harder puncher than Mike Tyson, harder puncher than Lennox Lewis, harder puncher even than Mike Weaver, who was a great puncher back in the day. So yeah, let me know what you think about it.